Hi guys, welcome back to the Desktop. Freddy here with another retro RPG. And this week I'll be concentrating on Dungeons & Dragons again. As I mentioned in my last video, I've started dungeon mastering Dungeons & Dragons again after a break of around 30-35 years. So my interest has been drawn back to Dungeons & Dragons, and I decided to, on Retro RPG, go through a few of the older books. And this is the second thing I got, which was the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition Players Handbook. It's very raggedy because it has been very well played over the intervening years. This is possibly the version of Dungeons & Dragons I've played most. I've played various campaign worlds with this edition, played a lot of Forgotten Realms, Dark Sun, some Spelljammer. Very interesting. The amount of background available, or backgrounds available for AD&D 2nd Edition was phenomenal. You used to walk into game shops and half the role-playing section would be just AD&D materials. There would just be so much. But let's start with the back of the book. The Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook. This is the indispensable encyclopedia of fantasy role-playing, and also the perfect companion to the referee's 2nd Edition Dungeon Master's Guide. Everything players need is here. How to determine a character's strength, wisdom, charisma, and other abilities. The difference amongst the various fantasy races, from elves and halflings to dwarves, gnomes, and others. Complete rules for the character improvement, the most advantageous mapping and combat procedures, and much more. All of this easy-to-use revised version of the classic role-playing rulebook. With the 2nd edition, the best-selling role-playing game in history gets even better. $20 US, and the UK price tickets faded so much in the years. And inside, it's a lot cleaner presentation than the early editions. We've got lots of cover pages here, introductions, foreword by David Cook. Let me center the book up a bit. Special thanks, credits. We're into the table of contents, nice color plates. You can see the presentation's off the scale compared to the old Dungeons & Dragons box set, which was about 10 years before this. I believe that was 1987. This came out in 1989. So we're talking about alongside other role-playing games. Shadowrun came out about this time. Cyberpunk came out this time. But this is a very nice book. It feels sturdy as well. Why 2nd Edition? We're seeing lots of things which we saw last week in the introductory pamphlet. We go through an example of play, examples of types of dice, and the terms, what is THACO? An acronym for To Hit Armor Class 0, the number that character needs to roll in order to successfully hit a target with AC 0. We go through the attributes and all the bonuses, so big tables of what you can do. So with a higher strength, you've got a percentage chance of bend bars, lift gates. The notes of what kind of strength. So if you get a belt of Hill Giant strength, you've got a strength of 19. Belt of Titan strength, you've got a strength of 25. I sort of mentioned in my last video how the percentiles work. So you've got strength from 1 to 18, and then 1801 to 1800, which continue the progression up, but are just for fighters who rolled an 18 strength and then get the bonus on top by rolling a random percentile chance. So an 18 strength on any other character class type, so if you're a thief or a wizard, you get a bonus of +1 to hit, +2 for damage. But a fighter automatically, even if they roll really quite badly of 0, 1 to 50, gets +1 to hit, but +3 to damage. Sorry, my voice is going a bit. Right up to 18100, a 1% chance you've got, but it's amazing how many people come out with that 1% chance. I would say it happens 50% of the time. But they get +3 to hit, +6 damage. A massive increase over a thief with their +1, +2. Anyway, we've got dexterity, which doesn't have any kind of percentile. It's not like thieves get to have percentile dexterity, where you get reaction in adjustments, defensive adjustments. Constitution, we get bonus hit points and chance of survival, with you get regeneration. So yes, if you've got a Constitution of 25, you regenerate 1 hit point a turn. But that's very unlikely you're going to get that, because in 2nd edition it didn't have the rule where when you go up a few levels you get to increase your attributes. Basically they were set from when you rolled up your character. So if you rolled up a really quite weak character, you were stuck with that forever. Wishes and things could increase. I believe a wish could increase your attribute by 1 point. But there was no other ways. We've got intelligence, we've got wisdom, chances of spell failures, spell immunities for high stats, and charisma. So you can see how for a fighter, strength becomes massively important and the other stats are far less so. And this edition definitely introduced the idea of dump stats, where a fighter definitely doesn't need a high intelligence or probably not a charisma, probably not a wisdom, because a fighter isn't going to have any chance of spell failure. They're not going to get bonus spells. Their magical defense for an extra few points doesn't matter, and they don't get spell immunity until they're above what's natural for normal races. So there's no point in putting a good. So if you're rolling dice and then assigning it, wisdom's definitely one of the ones you're going to put as a lower priority. Your intelligence as well. Most of these are about magic and magical immunity. So why is your fighter going to have these? You're going to concentrate on your strength, your dexterity, your hit points, your constitution to get extra hit points. So you deal damage better, you avoid damage better, and you can take damage better. Then we're on to the races. We've got dwarves, elves, gnomes, half-elves, halflings, and humans, and that's it. We don't have any dragonborn, we don't have any tieflings, we don't even have half-orcs in this edition. We have very limited races, and that shaped the fantasy worlds. Forgotten Realms, to me, because I grew up playing the Forgotten Realms in 2nd edition, doesn't have half-orcs wandering around everywhere. It doesn't have dragonborn and tieflings and, oh, I can't even remember what the half-angel ones are called. But all of these races don't exist in my head version of the Forgotten Realms. I know that they've moved the timeline on a couple of 100 years since 2nd edition, but really 200 years for entirely new races to spring into existence? Don't know. Don't really like it. Anyway, we go through those. We've got average heights for the races, ability score requirements for the classes, and then we're on to the classes. We've got warriors, which are broken down into paladins, rangers, and that's it. Where's the straight fighter? Should be a straight fighter. There it is, fighter. I apologize, I skipped over fighter. So your fighter just gets standard abilities, ability to beat people up. Your paladin sacrifices very little of that and has to have a high charisma as well. They need a 17. So they can't really use charisma as a dump stat like a fighter can, because all a fighter needs is strength. Strength of 9 and you qualify for a fighter. But paladins gain magical abilities. Hopefully they'll get a Holy Avenger. Rangers, who need strength, dexterity, constitution, and wisdom, so they don't really have that many dump stats either. Charisma and their intelligence, I guess. Rangers can be stupid. They get some thief abilities, they get to sneak in the wilderness, they get to track in the wilderness, but they need to wear lighter armor. They also get two-handed weapons, so they can wield a sword in each hand. That's a natural ability for a ranger in 2nd edition. We've got wizards, who are broken down into mages, illusionists, and that's it. So they are different schools of magic. Where's the prime requisites? Intelligence for mages, and dexterity for an illusionist. So their prime requisite is intelligence, but they don't need intelligence, they just need a high dex. Interesting. Priests, who are broken down into clerics and druids. And that's it. Clerics need a fairly high wisdom, 9 or better, so not that high. And druids require wisdom of 12, so they need to be wiser than clerics. So you've got the healing classes there. Then we're on to rogues, who are thieves, who need a dexterity of 9. And bards, who need a dexterity of 12, and intelligence of 13, and charisma of 15. They don't have many dump stats either. I've never actually games mastered or played with somebody who played a bard. Never at all. I know in 5th edition lots of characters now start with random musical instruments, so lots of people will play music, which is kind of right for a medieval society, that lots of people will entertain each other around the campfire, but the bard gains magical abilities from that. In 2nd edition, they were mainly spell-like abilities. So multi-classing and dual-classing. Multi-classing is only available to non-humans, and that's where they choose several classes and they kind of increase them all together. So they can be a fighter mage or a fighter thief mage, and the cost of experience will be multiplied, and those classes will creep up because the experience is set out, leveled out between them. So if you earn 300 experience from an encounter, 100 goes into each of your 3 classes, or 150 if you've got 2 classes. So you will level up a lot slower than everybody else, but gain the full abilities of those classes. Now that's the advantage of metahumans. I'm not sure what the Dungeons & Dragons terms for them, non-humans. Dual classing is a human thing where a human can go up in levels as a thief and then decide to dual class into becoming a fighter. So they will have all the abilities of a 15th level thief, let's say, and start again from level 1 as a fighter. However, the rules say that if you are a 1st level fighter, you cannot use the levels of the thief, or you gain no experience from that adventure, which seems really, really harsh. But anyway, let's carry on. We have alignments. So in AD&D, we'd introduced the sort of grid of it. So you've got your lawful, neutral, chaotic, and good, neutral, evil. So we've got lawful good, lawful neutral, lawful evil, neutral good, true neutral, neutral evil, chaotic good, chaotic neutral, chaotic evil. And they were very strict. You know, paladins had to be lawful good, rangers have to be good, etc., etc. I think druids have to be neutral. If you break your alignment and the Games Master deems that, then he can force you to change your alignment. So paladin, being lawful good, can be forced to break from lawful good if they do an evil action, becoming lawful neutral or neutral good, and then they can't qualify as a paladin anymore, so they become a fighter of the same level, which, given the experience to gain paladin levels is more expensive than the experience to gain fighter levels, means you'll be behind all the other fighters, and also you get reset to the start of that level, losing all experience you've gained towards the next level. So changing alignments was really quite serious in 2nd edition. It's definitely something you didn't want, and magical items which could change your alignment were horrifically dangerous and terrified players. Although I think our Games Master, I'm not sure whether it's in the rules, said if you return to your original alignment by the end of the adventure, you were fine. So you could be penalised for a while because you broke your alignment, but as long as you redeemed yourself before the end of that adventure, everything was okay. But that might have just been a house rule. Got changing alignment there. acquiring proficiencies, and the proficiencies which came in. So these are basically skills in the more modern versions. So you can have skills in swimming, hunting, fishing, etc., ancient history, blind fighting, armor, etc. So many skills called non-weapon proficiencies in this version. And we're on to the equipment, which is standard for a fantasy game, although we've got some interesting additions in here. You know, a ransor, very much like the partisan. The ransor differs in that the main blade is thinner and projecting blades extended more like the tines of a fork. These can trap a weapon and sometimes punch through armor. Sword, kopesh, an Egyptian weapon. So we've got lots of interesting things because Dungeons & Dragons at this stage was not set to a particular world. It's trying to just create a generic fantasy. So if you want to create a fantasy adventure in ancient Egypt-based world with the priests of the temples and the pyramids and all that, then you've got kopeshes that you can arm your soldiers with. They don't have to just use generic swords. Although, why they didn't just say generic sword and you can describe it as anything, I don't know. But they've got it all in there. Bronze plate mail. We've got all armors in here. Now, I kind of mentioned in the last video about armor classes. There we've got the armor class ratings. Armor classes drop as you get more armor, rather than going up. In the current version, as you get armor, and as you get dexterity bonuses, they add to your armor class. And that becomes the target number for hitting. In AD&D, your armor class drops. So you start off standing in your pants, not dodging, with an armor class of 10. And as you go up through, getting leather or padded armor, an 8. Chainmail and shield, 4. Full plate mail and shield, 0. And then you get magical versions on top of that. So you're carrying a +5 shield and wearing +5 armor. You can get your armor class down to -10. And that changes the target number. But oddly enough, in reverse of what makes sense. So somebody to hit armor class 0, if their THAC0 is 10. So they need to roll a 10 to hit armor class 0. But they need to roll only 2 if they're fighting somebody wearing leather armor. Because the 8 comes off their target number. But if they're fighting somebody wearing full plate armor and shield with +5 bonuses on both, so the armor class is -10, then they need to roll a 20 because it adds on to their target number. It makes no sense, but it's how we did things in the day, and it worked for us. But let's be honest, it's stupid, and the new rules are far, far better. Let's just leave it at that. Encumbrance, and then we're into magic, how the spells work. We've got combat section. Encounters, again, lovely internal artwork. Followers. Because of Dungeons & Dragons start as a game detailing the adventures of your generals, because that's what Dungeons & Dragons started off as, where people would be playing war games and they'd want to know why this hero was particularly heroic on the battlefield. So they would create adventures and they would go out and play Dungeons & Dragons basically to say what their characters did. But Dungeons & Dragons had a huge hireling and follower system where as your character went up levels, they would gain fame and they would gain followers. Now, your ranger would gain animals, but priests and things would gain other priests as people came to them to learn the religion. But animals would flock to a ranger, which I always found kind of odd, because while the other heroes are being followed around by a 3rd level fighter or a 5th level priest or whatever, I was playing a ranger and I was being followed around by a dog, which is far less useful. It would have been better if I'd been followed around by a magical horse or something, but that's not the way Dungeons & Dragons worked. But you gain followers, you can hire hirelings, you can hire henchmen who are people who will buff out your party. There's lots of jokes of the time of, you know, sending your hireling down a passageway to see if it's trapped because they are cheaper than taking damage and taking a healing potion for yourself. Player character obligations. limits of vision, so how far people can see, light sources, some nice artwork, and then we're into the spell descriptions and section. So a big, thick wizard book. In the modern edition, everything is just alphabetical, so on the character sheet you will be able to say, oh, I've got Fireball, and you'll look up F. In this edition, you need to know that Fireball is a 3rd level spell, so you go into 3rd level spells, search through. Am I remembering it right? I'm going to be embarrassed. Oh, there it is, Fireball. So you need to know what level spell. In later editions as well, you can cast spells at a higher level. So you can cast Magic Missile at higher levels and gain more separate missiles to it. In 2nd edition, spells gained extra dice for being cast by a more powerful wizard, so Magic Missile would gain more missiles automatically, but it was still only a 1st level spell. So a 1st level spell from a 20th level wizard would do a lot more damage than from a 1st level wizard. It's an interesting idea. I do quite like the way they do it now, but I can totally appreciate that in this edition, as wizards learn spells better, they become better at them, instead of just simply having to use a more powerful spell slot. Anyway, there are pages and pages of spells here up to 9th level. We've got the priest spells afterwards, and then we've got a few tables at the end. I don't really think we need to go into much more than that. Go beyond the game, inviting you to join the RPGA. And that is the Player's Handbook. And at 21.5 minutes, I think that's where we'll leave this video. Thank you very, very much for watching. As always, please like and subscribe if you like me wittering on about old role-playing games, especially when the spine is falling apart. But most of all, you look after yourselves. And I'll catch you later. Bye.